Do you find it really difficult to manage your emotions? We're taught to leave our emotions at the door and to make sure that we don't allow our emotions to get involved. And that is a major challenge for most people. We're emotional beings, and therefore, separating ourselves from our emotions is not possible. So stick with me, because this week I want to unpack all that and help you to have a lot easier time with your emotions. Hi, this is Grant Herbert, VUCA Leadership and Sustainable Performance Coach. And today I want to continue our conversation around our identity and building who we are and creating the best version of ourselves at any particular time by helping you to understand your emotions. You are an emotional being. Human beings are wired with physiological cues and clues called emotions so that we know what's going on around us in our world and we can respond accordingly. Unfortunately, emotions in the professional setting have been cast aside as being useless, and let's make sure we keep the emotion out of it and stick to the logic. And that's where the problems come in. We've been told to manage our emotions, and that indeed is the worst thing that we can try and do. Your emotions are there for a reason. They're there as a sign and a signal to let you know that there's something going on in your world so that you can then take the appropriate action to work through that. Unfortunately, if the mindset is that you're going to manage your emotions, what you do is suppress them, ignore them, put them aside, control them, corral them. And that's where the problems can come in. Emotions are firstly, as I said, a physiological clue that something's going on in and around you. It's what you make that mean that then determines the feeling. And the feeling is what we always talk about. You see, that psychological of what you make it mean, what beliefs that is coming out of, what you're ruminating on, what thoughts go through your mind in that particular time, and where that dialogue goes determines how you utilize that emotion. If I have a physical pain in my chest and I make that mean that I'm having a heart attack, I'm going to respond totally different than if I thought it was a bit of heartburn. So, what I want you to do, firstly, this week, is recognize that your emotions are there for a reason. All those things that you've been taught before, let's unlearn those. Managing your emotions is not what you want to do. Discarding them, ignoring them, leaving them at the door is not going to work. What I'm going to help you to do is to navigate your emotions, embrace their power, and utilize them for their purpose. So, how do we do this? Over the next few weeks, I'm going to help you with this. And firstly, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we understand which emotion we're actually experiencing. There's been teaching over the years that each human being is hardwired with about 6 common emotions and everybody expresses them the same way. And these things have been debunked. Understanding that you do your emotions differently to the way that others do their emotions is very important. It's particularly important when we're working with others and we look at the way they are responding and reacting around us. And if we think that they're going through a certain emotion, that's going to create a problem and a misunderstanding, which is going to be a breakdown in communication and end up in conflict. So the first thing is making sure that you understand which emotion you're actually going through. So to do that, the first thing that I always want to do is help you to notice the emotion. In the hustle and bustle of this busy VUCA world, we go through the day ignoring what's going on in our emotions and we just work flat out and head down, tail up, and whatever else we're doing. However, if we're not attuned to what is physiologically happening in our body, we don't see the cue. It's just like driving down the road and not recognizing that there are signs to tell us when to slow down, when there's a possibility of danger, when we have to respond in a certain way. If we miss those signs, then we end up with a ticket, and in worst case scenario, people get hurt. So with your emotions, it's being able to check in, it's being able to be attuned and open to the fact that you are going to experience physiological cues during your day that are an alert to you that something is going on. So that's the first thing. Notice the emotion. The second thing to do then is to give it a name, to make sure that you label that emotion in the correct way. Once you've named the emotion, you know which emotion you are experiencing, and therefore you can employ strategies so that you can work with that emotion in a healthy way. Remember, I said that not everyone does emotions the same way. As a coach, I love to ask the question when people say that they are experiencing a certain emotion. I say, explain that to me. Tell me how you do angry. Tell me how you do sad. Tell me how you do happy so that I get an understanding of what that means to the individual. So, in you being your own coach in that moment, you've got to be able to make sure that you know which emotion it actually is so that you can then employ the right strategy. Then the third thing to do is to navigate that emotion using the strategy that's going to give you the results that you want. So to do that, firstly, we understand that the word navigate is about a journey. So it's about going with the emotion. It's about unpacking it. It's about controlling not the emotion itself, but the inner dialogue. You see, that initial meaning that you put on that physiological cue will trigger an internal dialogue that will then tell you certain things, remind you of beliefs and uncertainties that you have. And because of that frame of reference, you'll then have a thought pattern which will lead you to feeling a certain way. You see, nobody else makes you feel anything. That power is in your hands. So by working through that gap and that link between the physiological and the psychological, you are then able to navigate that emotion in a healthy way. So if I'm working with someone and it looks like they're not understanding what I'm saying, I could get really frustrated and cranky and angry and whatever. Or I could do something a lot more resourceful. So to do that, what I need to do is harness those initial thoughts. So if someone's not picking up what I'm putting down, if I make that mean that they're not listening or they don't care or they don't respect me, then I'm going to have a thought pattern which is going to lead to an unhealthy feeling and behavior. So there you have it. Understanding your emotions is about giving yourself time to notice them. It's about giving them a name, and it's about then navigating them in a healthy way. Emotions are there to serve you, not the other way around. Emotions are something that you harness and navigate rather than manage and ignore and suppress. This is a key element of you being able to go through your life in a way which is a lot more fulfilling and a lot more fun. And being able to express yourself emotionally in an appropriate manner will definitely help you in your professional career and in your leadership. Last week, we talked about identity. We talked about those limiting and false beliefs, and all those things are a link into what we're talking about today. So, the foundation of who you believe you are and who you believe you're not will definitely come into the equation in that psychological understanding of the emotion you're going through. There are 13 competencies in emotional intelligence that I work through with an individual. Emotional intelligence is about you working with you. I also work in social intelligence, which is about you working with others. However, firstly, these foundational competencies of emotional self-awareness, accurate self-assessment, personal power, having that self-awareness around what's going on in you is where we want to start. Well, that's it from me for another week. Join me again next week as we continue this conversation when I actually go deeper into one of the most important competencies, the foundational competency of all others in emotional intelligence, and that is your personal power. I'll see you then.